Welcome to your first day on the job as a sheet metal worker. Today we'll be crafting heating ducts out of sheet metal for an unfinished basement. This will require you to cut and bend sheet metal, make use of multiple types of power tools, and install the finished ducts. Before we begin, let's go over our blueprints for the basement. A large part of your job will be planning how to install ducts for optimal airflow and making and reading blueprints. The first step of the job is planning what kind of ducts will be installed to get hot air from the furnace to the main floor. The blueprint on the workbench shows a layout of the basement with a grid where ducts can be installed. On the blueprint, you can see the main furnace on the bottom right side and the vent leading to the main floor on the top left side. There are several types of ducts we can install, each represented on individual cards next to the blueprint. You can pick up a duct card and assign it to a location on the blueprint by tapping that location. I'll help you get started. Grab the card with a round duct that attaches to the furnace. I'll point it out for you. Place that card on the blueprint grid above the furnace. That looks good. Now you'll have to decide on the next duct that will be installed along the path to the upstairs vent. You'll probably want to use one of the straight ducts for this step. Take another look at the blueprint and make sure you grab the right card. Now keep placing those duct cards onto the blueprint until the path is complete. I'll give you some feedback if things don't look correct. Great job! That looks like a solid layout. Now, most of those ducts have already been assembled, but we're missing a few straight rectangular ducts. You'll need to assemble one from scratch. I've written out the instructions on a whiteboard, and I'll walk you through them as well. Let's take a look at those instructions. Grab the whiteboard from the workbench now. All right, time to make some ducts. The first step is selecting the right type of metal. For heating ducts, we'll want to use steel that is 26 gauge and galvanized. You should have a few different types of sheet metal in the shelving unit near the workbench. Find and grab a piece of sheet metal that is galvanized and 26 gauge. Next, we'll need to cut down the sheet metal to the required size for the ducts, 40 centimeters by 50 centimeters. There are several ways we can cut sheet metal, and today we'll be using the large blue guillotine on the workbench. Place the sheet metal on the guillotine. Now you can grab the large black bar on the right of the guillotine and adjust how much of the sheet metal will be cut off. Move the bar to 40 or 50 centimeters. Once it's in place, you can grab the large handle on the left side of the guillotine and pull it down. Watch as the blade underneath cuts through the sheet metal. That first cut looks good. Complete the second cut, and I'll let you know where to put the sheet metal. All right, the measurements look good. Now place the cut metal in the crate on the other side of the workbench for later use. We'll need one more piece of sheet metal cut with the same dimensions. When you're finished cutting the sheet metal, place it into the same crate and we'll move on to the next steps. Sweet! Now we can move on to the next step, bending our sheet metal. We'll do this at the next workstation. Head there now by pressing the button labeled 2. Before we bend our sheet metal, we'll need to mark the locations of where we'll be making these bends. We'll be using a bending brake, which doesn't have those convenient markings on it like the guillotine. First, grab the sheet metal you just cut from the crate and place it on the drafting table. Now we'll need to get our right angle ruler into place for marking. Note that this ruler is attached to the drafting table. Our first bend will be straight down the middle of the sheet metal. Remember, the width of the sheet metal is 40 centimeters. Grab the right angle ruler and adjust its location to the center line of the sheet metal. When you get it in place, let go of it and I'll check if it's the right location. That's the right spot. Now grab the marker. Draw a line straight down the ruler onto the sheet metal. Looks good. We'll also need to mark the left side of the sheet metal for a second, smaller bend. This bend will be used in the assembly process, which I'll explain more in a bit. For now, mark the sheet metal at the 38 centimeter mark. All right, great. Now we'll use the bending brake on the workbench next to the drafting table to bend our sheet metal along the marked line. Place the sheet metal into the bending brake now. That's the right spot. Next, we'll need to secure the sheet metal in place. We'll use 2 small C-clamps located on the workbench. Grab them and place them onto the bending brake on both sides of the sheet metal. Now, grab the left or right handle of the bending brake and pull them towards yourself. And you should see the sheet metal bend. We'll need a full 90-degree bend, so pull that handle all the way towards yourself. Great! Now we need to do our second bend at the 38 centimeter mark. Grab and remove the C-clamps. Then, grab the sheet metal and place it on the 38 centimeter mark. Now, secure the brake in place with the C-clamps. This will be another 90-degree bend, so grab the handles and pull the bending brake towards yourself. Alright, now remove the C-clamps and place the bent sheet metal into the crate on the right side of the workbench for later use. Now we'll need to complete that set of 2 bends on our other piece of sheet metal. Grab it from the same spot you got the first one. Mark and bend it, then place it in the crate to the right of the workbench. So metal! Now we can move on to the final steps. Assembling our sheet metal into the duct. We'll do this at the next workstation. Head there now by pressing the button labeled 3. Alright, this is our final workstation. In a few minutes, we'll have a fully assembled duct. How riveting! Now for us to attach these 2 bent pieces of sheet metal together, we'll need something called a Pittsburgh seam. This seam will run down one side of the sheet metal, with the other side having the small bend we made at the 38 centimeter mark earlier. Then we can take the Pittsburgh seam from one of our bent pieces of sheet metal and socket the small bend from the other piece into that seam. This will connect our 2 pieces of sheet metal together. To make a Pittsburgh seam, we will be using this large Pittsburgh lockmaker. Turn on the machine by pressing the on button. Now grab the sheet metal from the crate and place it onto the right side of the Pittsburgh lockmaker. It'll grab the unbent side and pull it through the center area, adding the Pittsburgh seam. Now remove that piece and place it on the workbench. Then grab the other piece of sheet metal and run it through the Pittsburgh lockmaker. Great, now we can attach the 2 pieces together. Bring the bent side of one piece of sheet metal to the Pittsburgh seam of another one, and they should snap together. Awesome! Starting to look like a real duct. Next, we'll need to hammer that flap over the Pittsburgh seam, securing it in place. Grab the hammer from the workbench and hit the overhanging strips of metal until they're flush with the other part. Hammer both strips of metal on the duct. If you're confused, check the instructions I wrote out on the whiteboard. That should hold this duct together, but heat can escape through these seams. We'll need to cover them in foil tape, which will help with heat retention. Grab the foil tape from the workbench. Tape over both seams with foil tape. All right, looks nice and airtight. Next, we'll need to attach some flanges to the two open sides of the duct. This will allow for other ducts to be connected to this one and tightly secured. Some places use duct cleats, but we'll be using flanges. We'll need to secure those flanges to the duct using the hammer and power drill. Grab some flanges and attach them to the ends of the duct. Then hammer them in a few times so they're secure. The last step is to screw them into the duct with 2 sheet metal screws. And that's it, a finished rectangular duct. Great job! Place that in the crate for later use. If you'd like, you can assemble another duct or head right to the site for the installation by pressing one of the buttons on the desk. Welcome to our unfinished basement. We'll be installing some ducts into the furnace room, including our rectangular duct and a few other types. These ducts are pretty quick to install. Simply place them onto the duct hangers and secure them in place. You'll be using the power drill a lot here. We've got all the information on what type of ducts we'll need to install on the blueprint you set up earlier. Let's grab our first duct from the pile and place it onto the duct hangers. Next, secure that to the hanger using the power drill. And finally, secure that duct to the previous one by attaching the flanges together with the power drill. Looking good! Now grab the next duct we'll need and secure it in place. You can check your blueprint to see what type of duct we'll need. All right, I think you've got the flow down. Keep placing and securing those ducts until you've reached the furnace. Fabrication sheet metal workers, sometimes called precision sheet metal workers, make precision sheet metal parts for a variety of industries, from power generation to medical device manufacturing. Most work in shops and factories, operating tools and equipment. Maintenance sheet metal workers repair and clean ventilation systems so the systems use less energy. Workers remove dust and moisture and fix leaks or breaks in the sheet metal that makes up the ductwork. All right, that looks great. Excellent job today. I think the homeowners are really going to appreciate all their savings on their heating bill. We'll have to get out of here soon as the electrician is coming to install the main appliances. Thanks for your hard work. You really nailed it today.